Ladies and gentlemen, welcome again to our CEO Talks, the fourth edition already. And Colin and I today, I have the honor to host George Teodorescu from MIXBOOKs. George also is a very, very good friend. We know each other for several years. We are currently located in Chisinau in Moldova, George. And also, if I'm not wrong, the last couple of months, you are also the Vice President of AmCham Moldova. I will give you the floor, George, to say a few things about
and you
yourself.
forgot to mention that we share a birthday, I believe.
And yes, indeed, this is a very good point. We share a birthday as well. Very good to know. I give you the floor, George, and then my good friend Colin will lead the moderation.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mamas. Hello, Colin. Well, thank you very much for inviting me on the show. Well, I am basically a U.S. lawyer by training. I am admitted at the New York bar. I grew up in New York City, originally from Romania. But for the past better part of the last 10 years or so, I've been working in the Republic of Moldova. Initially as a lawyer running an American-owned law firm, and then at this point, I'm representing a Silicon Valley company called MIXBOOK. As you mentioned, it's engaged mainly in e-commerce, but our office here in Moldova handles the technical and the IT side of the operation. So technically, we're an IT company in the Moldovan market, and part of the Moldovan ecosystem. So that's pretty much it. Very happy to be here.
Well, hi, Joy. Hello, Mamas again, and thanks for asking me back on this session. And it's really interesting for me as we pop over the border into Moldova to help me learn a little bit more about it. And I think it's fair to say, George, over the last 2 or 3 years, we've seen a sort of strong development in the Moldova region in Romania, but in Iași, and then across the border in Moldova itself is really growing, particularly in the IT and the business services industry. Tell us about, obviously, I could say, why are you there? Why is your business there? But what is the attraction there for companies coming to and looking to invest in the region?
Well, it's actually a good question. And as I mentioned, for a number of years here in Moldova, I worked as an attorney for foreign investors. And one of the roles of an attorney for foreign investors and that come to Moldova, or at least are interested in Moldova, is to try to sell Moldova too. So I would go to a lot of sort of international shows and international conferences and say, you guys should come to Moldova. But I never had an answer to one simple question: what is Moldova's forte? What exactly is Moldova good at? Because if you say Switzerland, you think, watches and chocolate. If you say Germany, maybe great cars. But Moldova, there was something that came up. And until very recently, this was wine. Wine was, sort of Moldova's kind of #1 export, one of the top exports. But what's been happening over the past, I want to say almost 8 years or so, Moldova has been diversifying and trying to attract a foreign investor. And one of the interesting things is that as of a few months ago, the export of IT services has sort of overtaken wine by value in Moldova, which is kind of very hard to kind of fathom for somebody who's been in Moldova long enough, knows they have great wine, and it's basically it's been a prime industry for the last 400 years, so to speak. So what's happening here in Moldova, at least for IT investors, is that it is a booming industry here. It's a great ecosystem, IT ecosystem, that's kind of growing from upwards and developing. There's a highly skilled and qualified workforce, great work ethic and personal skills that you can find here if you want to set up an IT, whether an IT outsourcing shop, or like we are, a fully owned by the mother company, working on a product type of shop. I should also add the regulatory framework. As I mentioned, Moldova has really made a point to attract IT investors. So they actually have a dedicated IT industry law. It's called the IT Parks Law, so to speak, that cuts the red tape and basically makes it easy and efficient to run a business here. So the Moldovan government made it a priority to attract IT investors, and they've done an amazing job. I mean, I have to say I'm very actually impressed. And I should just add really quickly for any other investors.
a nice selling job of Moldova, and it's quite interesting where you're saying there's no specific, and maybe that's a good thing. Mamas, I'm going to come to you very briefly because obviously you've set up your business there, so you're obviously seeing a surgence of organisations and businesses, small and large, starting to invest there. Is there anything you want to sort of add to what George says there?
Yeah, quite interesting. I do agree with what George just mentioned. I was also quite impressed and surprised in the positive way to find out that Moldova is not anymore an agricultural country. There has been a shift as well. My first time I've been in Moldova, in Chisinau, was somewhere in September 2006. This is 14 years ago, and indeed it has changed a lot. And also our effort as directors of BRCC, Colin, to move there and to try to establish something there is another positive aspect, showing the internationalism that Moldova slowly is getting into, and becoming a bigger dot in Europe's map.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. In fact, I was drinking a bottle of Moldovan Merlot wine last night, and I have to say it was pretty excellent. So it's quite interesting. And just George, just moving on to current affairs, I guess. Yeah, we're in the middle, literally in the middle of a sort of a transition period with the COVID-19, where the relaxation of the restrictions is happening in Romania. I'm talking, and I just want to sort of touch on for Moldova and for you personally as well. I've just come back and just seen people. I saw two people shaking hands. I've seen a group of people in an office together. How concerned are you, George, on this? And what are you doing in your company up until now? And I guess more importantly now is through this transition and out of the transition, what are you doing, and what is your advice for people out there?
Well, you're right. You're totally right, Colin. I think the pandemic, or the emergency that the pandemic brought about, pretty much affects all of us. But the IT industry generally is kind of uniquely adapted to distance work, to telecommuting. I used to joke that a computer engineer can program from the beach in Thailand if they want to, although it's kind of hard to concentrate. So to start with, I think both us and the rest of the companies, whether they be in Moldova, IT companies or elsewhere, have been having a pretty relaxed work from home policy, even going into this particular situation. So in that respect, unlike probably manufacturing companies or others that really do require on-site presence, we were probably better adapted to it. That being said, there are certainly challenges, Zoom fatigue, a lot of psychological issues when it comes to actually stressing out. So what we've been doing so far, is make sure that we always clearly communicate to our team, what is the plan, what are we planning to do going forward. So they actually always have a vision or an idea of, that they're being kept in touch and in the loop. We also wanted to make sure, for instance, that everybody has a great home office. So everybody received a budget, a sizable budget to set up their home office, buy the right things, the great printer or the great Wi-Fi, or, a good, hearings or kind of, headset. So we actually made sure that, looking and kind of expecting that work from home may in fact become more the norm. We try to make sure everybody is fairly well set up there. We also give everybody a chance to get company-covered health insurance, for instance, private health insurance that gives them a much wider access. We pay for everybody to have COVID-19 tests if they need to. So we went out there to make sure that not only are they relaxed working from home, but also that they are aware that the company sees them as partners, so all our employees are mainly as partners. So that's pretty much what we've been doing so far. And of course, we are planning, looking forward on how to make matters better, healthier, and with an eye to eventually, when the time comes to reopen, that everything will be very, very safe going forward.
Okay. And I'm probably answering my own question when I ask you, with your team, the way they're accepting what you just laid out, they're feeling that you're showing the care for them rather than just setting rules for the sake of it. So I guess that's I know you're going to say that's what you're doing, but I guess that's what you would advise other people as well to do, to be very collaborative, work with your people and show that you care and doing the sensible things, basically. Yeah.
Obviously. I mean, one of the things I also learned when I started working in generally the IT industry is that oftentimes engineers and IT professionals tend to be very logical people. They need to know something makes sense, and oftentimes if it makes sense and if it's well explained, it actually is a lot more easier and in fact to embrace than if something comes down as a bit of an order or a diktat, if you will. And that's what we've been always trying to kind of make sure that we're partnering up with our workforce.
So somebody told me once, if it makes sense, it's probably the right thing to do. So I like your make sense attitude. So moving on, going from the care aspect of this situation into good hard business, because I think we're hearing a multitude of variations of companies depending, as you touched there, which industry they're in. Some are not just surviving; they're actually flourishing. Others are surviving. Others are suffering. There's a big mix there. Looking at the recovery, let's call it, which I think covers a lot of companies, how they're beginning to recover and get the stimulus going. Have you got a piece of advice for those guys out there?
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, I think we discussed this, and I think we can all agree that going forward, probably the way of doing business and just the economy in general is going to be very, very different. What I would suggest to a lot of companies is, to sort of try to do their best to invest in online and remote business strategies, protocols. If they actually do need to actually have a physical office, which I think most companies will still keep a physical office, just find a way to have distance compliant practices, perhaps move sales online, less brick and mortar stores. I think that I was just actually thinking about an article in the New York Times that talks about the fact that the landlords of office buildings in New York are probably going to be quite unhappy at the end of this story, because most companies will find that, brick and mortar stores might be on their way out. Offices might be an optional thing. Not that we intend to actually have optional offices, but it's the kind of stuff that I think most companies should keep in mind. And, optimize telecommuting. And again, I do realize that sort of the care aspect toward the employees, it's a bit touchy-feely and less hard-nosed business. But there is an opportunity here to make sure that you loyalize your employees. When they realize that they're actually partners and not just a mercantile and mercenary sort of transaction, they will always remember the fact that, when times were tough, the company was there for them. So it does bring an extra, if you will, dimension to the work relationship. And that's actually makes hard-nosed business sense down the road.
Good stuff. Good stuff. George, thank you very much. I'm actually looking at two people who know Moldova very well. I have to confess, I've never been there because I'm waiting for an invitation. So no pressure, guys. I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing you in Chisinau or somewhere in the not too distant future. But George, thank you very much for that, for your useful advice. And obviously stay safe, my friend, and we'll see each other soon. Mamas, back to you for the final words.
Very, very interesting chat, George. I always enjoy our talks. Getting some insight from you on how are things in Moldova Republic and in Chisinau, which is a city that has a special place in my heart as well. Certainly, we will invite Colin as soon as possible in Chisinau and enjoy a very nice wine and very nice meal. Yeah, gents, thank you very much.